Chapter 6. Whatever you can forget cannot be the eternal. Is it possible to tell me what to do step by step to come closer to realization? Why does one have to do any practice? And for what purpose? Is no practice to be done then? You remain confused so long as you are identified with your body. Even your question, what is to be done, is only from the point of view of your association with the body. As an individual concerned with the body, what am I to do? That really is your question. So long as you remain identified with the body, your confusion will continue. Yes, intellectually it is clear, but when a realized person says that everybody is realized already, it would mean I am realized, but I don't feel like it. The person who says, I don't feel like it, is again identified with the body. So I am unable to express whatever I feel. Is it not something which is there and which you use? Without this consciousness, you would not be able to think or do anything. So that which you are using is already there. There is no other practice to be done except to understand, that is, telling yourself with conviction, that it is this knowledge that you are which is itself the knowledge, and not the way you are using this knowledge at the individual level. So the knowledge itself is the one that exists and must remain pure in and as that knowledge. And you must remain apart from it. That knowledge that you are has mistakenly identified itself with the body, and so you are thinking of yourself as the body. But you are the knowledge. Strengthen your conviction that you are the knowledge, this beingness, and not the body. How can one do so? By meditation, like dhyana. And dhyana means the knowledge must remain in meditation with the knowledge. Now, what is meditation? Meditation is the knowledge I am, remaining in that knowledge. There is the waking state and the sleep state, and the knowledge that you are. I exist. I know that I exist. Other than that, what capital does anyone have than merely this knowledge I am? I see it as being important because everything else is changing. What can you base your questions on? The only thing that you have is the knowledge that you exist. Other than that, what knowledge do you have? No knowledge. No other knowledge. Therefore, be in that, and don't presume that you are someone to act. That is all you can do at this stage, and remain in that. All questions really come via your mind and body, from which you have to be separate. This is the total message. Remain in that. If you can accept this message, you may come here because you will repeatedly hear the same thing. But if it is not acceptable to you, then don't waste your time. In the spiritual line, what work have you done? Have you read anything, done anything, been anywhere? Yes. In 1960, I became interested. At that time, I met Swami Menon. Presumably, the visitor is referring to Sri Krishna Menon, also known as Sri Atmananda, and went to his lectures. I go to Rama Ashram frequently, because there Maharaj's book was given to me by Sri Ganesan. You read Ramana Maharshi and both volumes of I Am That? All the time, Ramana Maharshi's books and Maharaj's. What has been said in Ramana Maharshi's books and what has been said in Maharaj's books, does it tally? Absolutely. Ramana Maharshi is somewhat distant and gets you a little scared. Maharaj is tweaking your nose and talking and easier to absorb. You have a clear picture then of your true nature, of what you are. In words, yes. Even if you accept it in words, that is already a lot. Who is it that accepts what has been said in the words? Now that which accepts what has been said in the words, is that principle not separate from the words? I am still a person with a memory. I hope to progress beyond that. What makes you consider yourself as a person? Your identification with the body. Will this individual personality last? It will remain only so long as the identification with the body remains. But once there is a firm conviction that you are not the body, then that individuality is lost. It is the simplest thing. As soon as you have this conviction that you are not the body, then automatically, instantaneously, you become the total manifest. As soon as you leave your individuality, you become the manifest totality. But your true being is apart from even that which is totally manifest, and you assume this individuality within that total manifest so long as you are identified with the body. When there is no individuality, what will you consider to be the one who meditates and the meditation? When this individuality is not there, who meditates and on what? People talk very freely of meditation, but what do they really do? They use their consciousness to concentrate on something. Dhyana is when this knowledge, this consciousness that I am, meditates on itself, and not on something other than itself, on itself. Knowledge has no form in any case. So that is when the I am turns in on itself. It again gets qualified with form because that is the way I am to myself now. When you say you must sit for meditation, the first thing to be done is understand that it is not this body identification that is sitting for meditation, but this knowledge, I am, this consciousness, which is sitting in meditation and is meditating on itself. When this is firmly understood, then it becomes easy. When this consciousness presence merges in itself, the state of samadhi ensues. When this mana, buddhi, chitta, or whatever names are being used, merges in that state, then even the knowledge, I am meditating, gets lost. This also becomes merged in that state. It is the conceptual feeling that I exist that disappears and merges into the beingness itself. So this conscious presence also gets merged into that knowledge, that beingness. That is samadhi. That knowledge unfolds itself and begins to have the knowledge of everything movable and immovable. And that knowledge begins to know itself. And ultimately what happens? The conscious presence alone remains. That is, there is just conscious presence, not I or you or anything. I repeat, it is total presence. That is total manifestation, not I, you, or any individual. This consciousness which is within the body, and therefore has mistakenly assumed that it is the body, gradually realizes its true nature, namely that it is only conscious presence without any inherent individual aspects. Finally, it considers itself the conscious presence of the total manifestation, and all individuality is lost. Thus, what starts as selfishness in the individual sense, as identification with the individual, ultimately becomes knowledge of the self as conscious presence. Have you any comment on this? When you ask questions, ask them on the basis that you are not the body-mind, but that you are the conscious presence. It seems that Maharaj is describing two aspects of meditation on the beyond. First, this concentration, consciousness turning in on itself, the sense I am. And then from that standpoint, and only then, can the conscious being observe with what it has identified itself and free itself from all these identifications. The only thing that I come up against occasionally is that during the course of meditation, some very powerful forces get released in the body and try to shake it sometimes. And at other times there are visions or psychic experiences. All one has to do during such times, what I understand from Maharaj, is to hold the sense I am and try to observe what is happening, even though it can tend to distract one very strongly from this sense of presence. That is true, except understand that you are not actually doing the witnessing. Of whatever happens, sitting in the morning or the visions that come to you, merely look at them, but understand that you are not looking at them. There is no you as an entity witnessing them. Witnessing takes place by itself. So just be in your meditation, and witnessing takes place of whatever there is to be witnessed. And don't even involve yourself in the witnessing. There is daylight outside. Well, we see it. We don't have to make a statement. I am seeing the daylight there. So we are not witnessing. Witnessing takes place automatically. One of the interesting things happening in America in the last few years has been the tremendous importance attached to giving people body massages and things like that to kind of artificially free up the flow of this life force through the body. I feel this is purely a mechanical thing, and sooner or later all the old stuff comes back again. But if we open ourselves in the way that Maharaj instructs us, you can just naturally feel all these little areas of contraction in the body melting away. And it seems to me this is one minor but still important reason for the spiritual aspect which he is presenting to us. Interpreter: he presently does not have enough strength to talk about that. When people refer to devotion, they devote themselves to God, but it is actually devotion to the vital force. All these yogis, what they are doing is they are devoting their time to the vital force. Does he mean by that the play of the vital force through the whole chakra system, and that they do all these exercises to manipulate the spine to elicit various effects? The most important thing is the vital force. Whatever names are given for doing all the spiritual practices, ultimately these efforts apply to the vital force only. Because without that, there is no existence at all. There is no consciousness. So the vital force is the most important. Whenever the vital force is there, that I consciousness, the knowledge I am, is there. And then there are the four kinds of speech. Para, Pashyanti, refer to existence. And all the activities happen through Madhyama and Vaikari. Madhyama means the mind, and Vaikari is the speech, as expressed, the words that ultimately come out through the mouth. People are directed to other things, but nobody tells them about this birth principle, sattva. That birth principle contains everything. All these four kinds of speech and everything else are contained in it. Not only that, the whole universe, everything that appears, is contained in the birth principle. This is the reason so much stress is placed on finding out what it is. Few people give attention to that birth principle because they don't realize its importance. Because of the birth principle, everything is. The world is. All the knowledge of the world is contained in it. Only 1 in 10 million persons can find out what the birth principle is. And once you know it, everything, all knowledge belongs to you. Even liberation is yours. Then there is the 9-month period in the womb. So what is the content of the womb? It is that knowledge I am, in dormant condition, that is being developed slowly. So within that birth principle, everything is contained. Interpreter: to people who criticize a lot but don't know anything, or somebody who claims to know too much, Maharaj jokingly says, you have not come out of the womb too fast, so everything, all knowledge is contained in that womb, he says. He has found certain changes taking place in his body, something extraordinary. For example, when you examine his pulse, some kind of inner strength is sensed. How do all these things happen? He says that the disease is for the birth principle, whereas he, being the witness of the birth principle, is unaffected. Because he has no birth, there is also no possibility of death. So he just witnesses all these things. He has passed all that on to the birth principle, he says, being the knower of it. Thus, the disease applies to the birth principle only. It has appeared, and ultimately what the disease can do is to extinguish that birth principle. But I am not that, he says. Therefore, he is unconcerned with it. Recognize what he is. In order to recognize him, you have to follow this method. He told you that your consciousness is God. Now, once you understand that you are not the body, but the consciousness, then you get stabilized or established in God's womb. When you go there, you can know what he is. Until then, you don't. That is why he says so many people have come and gone, but nobody has recognized him correctly. They come here and have frequent meetings, and then they say that they follow him. Ultimately, they will come to know that they are the Brahman. But they still don't know me, he says, the knower of Brahman. They don't know. You are still within the realm of consciousness. You are to transcend consciousness to know him. The effect of the disease will be that the memory of the birth will disappear. I am not affected, he says. So long as that remnant ink is available, there is a recording done. That applies to the causal body also. When the ink gets dried up, that causal body is also out of questions. He says some people have come to him who have realized, no doubt about it, they are yanis, but not Brahmayanis. They have stabilized in the consciousness. They have understood the Godhead, that they are God, but could not transcend it. Bri means world, and Aman means I am. So world together with I am the world, that is Brahman. For 42 years now, he has talked so much that he does not like to talk much now. Although people listen to him, they don't get rid of their concepts. Therefore, they remain ensnared within their concepts. In order to really understand what he says, you have to worship that prana, the vital force. That meditation is necessary. Wherever there is some sound, there must be something responsible for it. Now the world is there, so something must have been responsible for its appearance. So that is consciousness. Consciousness is there. Therefore the world is. Now, in whose presence can you say is the eternal truth, the absolute principle? Turiya means where the consciousness is. One who knows Turiya is Turiyatita. That is my state. Turiya is within the consciousness, which is the product of the 5 elements. And one who transcends that, who knows the Turiya, is Turiyatita. In order to be stabilized in Turiya, you must know the birth principle. Turiya is always described as the witness state that sees through waking, dreaming, and sleeping, and Turiyatita is beyond even that. That which is called birth, the birth principle itself, is Turiya. The experience that you exist itself is Turiya. At this moment, whatever you are, its principle has a beginning. It had to originate somewhere. It may be God, Krishna, Rama, anybody, but it had to originate at some point. Without birth principle, what is there? Interpreter: there is no reservation, you know. He does not spare anyone. He just talks straight. Tell him I saw that very vividly yesterday with a friend whom I brought here. He says he can talk like that because he has no doubts whatever about what is and what is not. That is why his talk is of this kind. There is no perhaps or suppose and all that kind of thing. It must be very frustrating for him when people come here and just cling blindly and adamantly to some concept and think they can find a solution through a little manipulation of that. Many sages in the past have proved their victory over mind. For example, there was Mirabai. Mirabai was a great saint, and she was given poison by her husband, but nothing happened to her. Then there is the story of another sage. This one was sick and had not taken medicine for a very long time, and all his disciples were very worried. So they said to him, "You must take medicine." He answered, "Bring all your medicines," and he gulped down the whole thing. And they were again worried, but again nothing happened. Now this also is victory over mind. Victory over mind is one thing. A better expression would be stabilizing in the self, conviction about your true nature. One common characteristic of these sages is that they know what they are. They identify themselves with the Supreme Self. So if somebody tells them about birth, death, sickness, they don't accept all that. They don't believe it, because they have no doubts about what they really are. You might put me out of business. I will go home and tell any patients who come to see me it is all in their head. Of all the statements that I have heard, I have not accepted any except my guru's that I am Brahman. That is the only acceptable statement to me. A man came here from Baroda and gave me some number and said, "You will become a millionaire overnight." I said, "Don't give me that. You give it to other people who are here. Because tomorrow in the same manner you will tell me I am going to die. So if I am going to become a millionaire, I can die also. It is of no value to me. So many people have come, including many doctors. They have said so much. I have just looked at them and ignored whatever they told me. We, as concepts, accept them and make them our own. It has become very difficult to reject them. I am not the product of my parents. They have not created me. I have come about spontaneously. In your case, you just think whether your parents attached those eyes here, put the nose there, and the mouth. Whatever information I have prior to birth, that is the only correct information. That knowledge is Parabrahman. Prior to birth is the Absolute, Parabrahman. And after birth is Chetana Parabrahman, the manifest Brahman or the consciousness Brahman. I am that principle which was not affected when the universe was dissolved so many times. This I am concept was not there prior to what you call birth. So as this concept has appeared, it will also go away. How am I affected? In no way whatsoever, because it is not true. This applies to all concepts. Prior to birth and after birth, whatever knowledge I have, my own, without hearing it from anyone, that is the only true knowledge which I accept. And the proof lies in my Guru's words. I tell people whatever is correct. I need not read the Vedas to learn from them, but prior to what is called my birth, whatever knowledge I already had, I am getting confirmation of it in the Vedas. In this world, it is common practice for human beings to ask others for knowledge in both worldly and spiritual matters, and from that they try to live, knowledge gathered from others, not their own. People learn whatever they are taught. What they were prior to being taught, nobody gives attention to. Whatever you can forget cannot be the eternal. It cannot be the truth. That is why you cannot forget your true state, and that is why you cannot remember it. Whatever you forget is not the truth. Always remember that. People come here to ask questions, but what do they know in order to ask questions? Do they have any real knowledge of themselves? Do they have any real knowledge? Whatever they have read, heard, or have been taught, they regurgitate. We identify ourselves with the name given us. And what is that name? It is whatever occurred to our parents. We are so much attached to that name, we act with it constantly in the world, and this name is an accident. The word that occurred to their minds is my name, and in this accidental thing, I am taking my form. This lady here usually tells her husband what she has heard at these talks. But today this is going to be very difficult for her, because this knowledge is beyond words. How can you put this into words? Normally the thought flow is continuous, always there. How much of that thought flow is useful to you? Of all these thoughts, take only those that are useful to you. Sometimes I command thoughts to get out. I don't want to have anything to do with you. Fewer than 1 in 1,000 people will ever wonder what is the use of all these thoughts that are just flowing. Very few stop to think about thinking. When thought has no customers, thought vanishes. There is no thought. Yet when he is teaching us, the thoughts are so clear and well defined. It is a paradox. I have no faith in any religion, including Hinduism. When you first come here, just listen to what is going on. Try to understand. Even if questions arise, don't ask them for the time being. Just listen. For now I will be talking about that power which looks like an individual, but because of whose presence the world is carrying on its business. It may not be easily comprehensible, but I cannot be bothered to go into much detail and explain everything at this stage, so try to understand as much as you can. Otherwise, let it go. I am talking about this power which is in the body, but which is the root of the existence and maintenance of the entire universe. What there is in my body is in everyone else's body also, but everyone else is concerned more about this corpse. that he is living with rather than that which lies within that corpse. Whatever upheavals occur in the world, they are movements in that power, for it is that which makes the world go round, and whatever events take place are movements in that consciousness. Because we associate ourselves with the events, there is unhappiness. I see things from a different standpoint, from the point of view of the Absolute. So what is your query? Well, it is just the impersonality of this power, and how nobody seems to have any capacity to control or manipulate it. Most of us in the West think we can, though, which is the biggest part of the illusion. And sometimes things seem to go one's way, but at other times they seem to go very much against what you believe to be right and proper. Whatever is happening is bound to happen. There is a series of events. A scenario is written down. So, according to that scenario, things happen. If we are identified with all sorts of things, we have certain hopes and aspirations. And if things turn out accordingly, we are happy. If the things that happen are not according to our wishes, we are unhappy. So we will continue to be happy and unhappy in an endless cycle so long as we persist in this attitude. However, the moment we see things in proper perspective, that all we can do is to see that witnessing happens, and that whatever happens is independent of our thoughts, then there is a different state. There is no volition as far as an individual is concerned. Things happen on their own. When that is seen, there is already a certain peace of mind. Whatever people complain about, the 5 elements are not bothered. So why should what happens in the 5 elements bother the individual? If the 5 elements themselves are not bothered by what people think and what they do or not do, how is this source of those elements upon which they depend concerned? Why would it be concerned? Some time ago I had suggested to you to read the Gita from the standpoint of Lord Krishna, not from that of Arjuna. Now, even when doing that, you must understand what I meant by Lord Krishna. I did not mean Lord Krishna as an individual personality. I meant Lord Krishna, that speck of consciousness within you, that I am, that I amness. That is Lord Krishna, this I amness. And you should read the book from that point of view. As far as anybody is concerned, could there be the world? Could there be God? Could there be anything at all in the absence of that Krishna consciousness? No, I don't believe so. The moment this is clearly understood, that is it. There is nothing further to be done. And whatever people continue to do or think they are doing, they are purely a concept based on a certain image they have of themselves. And once they act according to that image, they will be susceptible to all kinds of unhappiness. Whatever happens is a mere movement in that consciousness. Once this is understood, nothing remains to be done. There is nothing you can do or need to do. There remains a kind of paradox in the sense that when one embarks on a consideration of the spiritual life, certain decisions have to be made to minimize or at least economize one's worldly activities so that one may have more time available for such consideration. There is also some sense of urgency involved in this, probably still because of the illusion of being this person. But if in the enlightened state there is simply this posture of passive witnessing, how is it that these decisions get made, and how is it that they are carried through? Only this concept that you have about yourself, that is what decides, whether he be a big man, an important man, or a small man. Whatever he decides or thinks he decides, it is purely a concept. That is, the individual as an object thinks he can decide, but in fact, no object can decide. If he does not understand, then the whole thing is conceptual. It is to be understood that the body-mind complex is merely an object, a phenomenon, and no phenomenon can act. So the concept is very much involved in your body-mind complex. You will never be able to grasp your true nature. For this, the center of perception must change. If that center of perception is a phenomenon, then whichever way you look, that looking is still from the center of the phenomenon. So unless that center of perceiving itself is changed to the noumenon, you will never get an idea of your true nature. Who has decided that I am the body? Purely a concept. This concept is, of course, on the level of the mind. So it is only a concept that I am the body. And it is equally a concept that whatever action takes place, it is done by this body. That is, there has been an objectivization, a concept that I am this object, the body. From then on, it is the concept that whatever the body does is my doing. But once this concept is understood, that is, once the object is known as an object, the false as the false, then you take the standpoint of the subject. Once you take that standpoint, the object disappears, and you view whatever takes place as a happening in the condition, and you are not concerned with it. You are merely viewing it. That I am the body and an individual personality means I am time-bound. There is a measure of time. That same concept which has taken to saying I am the body, will I say I am born and will die? Who says I will die? Only the concept. Once you are away from the concept, the subject has no time in it. There is no space-time concept as far as the subject is concerned. I repeat, not only is it this concept that says I am the body, but it is also conscious of the fact that it is time-bound. Thus it says, I will die. But the one who knows the concept is not time-bound. He is quite apart from the concept. The body dies. This means what? It means only the thought I am, that concept, has disappeared. Nothing has happened to the knower of the whole happening. One who knows that this is a concept and that the concept will disappear does not have the experience of either the birth, the happiness or unhappiness, or the death. Maharaj was saying that we are all subject to this power, and we can do nothing over and against this power. It is really just a concept in our mind, and it never works out. Well, in a sense, from the standpoint that we come to him, the arising of enlightenment in an individual would seem to be quite apart from any volitional activity. The whole subject of the spiritual search or quest, there is no quest really, but we just use the word here for the sake of communication, is to understand the concept as a concept, the false as the false. There is nothing to be acquired. That I am God or that I am Christ, Allah, Muhammad, or whatever it is still based on the concept I am. Because unless that concept is reneged, all that you build on it will still be an illusion. So ultimately, only when this I amness itself disappears will you be free of the concept. So long as the basic concept I am is there, the conceptual element cannot disappear. It is the concept itself that has given various names to itself, but it is still the same concept. Without this basic concept I am, where is the world? God? Where is Ishvara, Christ, Allah, anyone? Before this concept I am came on you, were you happy or unhappy? Was there even any feeling of happiness or unhappiness? Any of the dualities? I don't know. I had no experience of happiness or unhappiness because this concept I am was not there. Nor was there any awareness of that fact. Whatever conceivable thing or feeling or thought, it can come only when there is this basic I amness. The basic I amness itself was not there. So who was to know who was to be aware? The very feeling of existence was not there. That I am, that I exist, the feeling, the concept itself was not there. So who was to have any feeling? Who was to have any awareness? Who was to have any consciousness? If I am a yogi, a king, or whatever, this consciousness that I am, this I amness, imagination, mind, call it what you like. is only this concept. Before this concept arose, was there anything? There was nothing. There was not even any happiness or unhappiness. The perfect state. I think the other thing that was absent and that gives rise to so many of our questions is the sense of time. For example, why was I not aware in the past? If there is some understanding, there is no past. Exactly. When one talks of consciousness, one is likely to think in terms of an individual. But understand that it is not really the individual that has consciousness, but it is the consciousness that assumes innumerable forms. I keep repeating that the average person will not understand this. Why? Because it is too simple to grasp. One wants something, some form, some shape. That something is born, and is going to die or disappear is all imagination, all an illusion. Nothing is born. It is the child born of a barren woman. Who calls it that? Even that is a concept, because in the absence of the basic concept, I am, there is no thought, no awareness, no consciousness of one's existence. To one of the visitors in particular, what about that actor friend of yours? Will he reach the state of absorbing what has been said now? To the interpreter, tell him he is at home, licking his wounds. Another feeling or idea I just wanted to put to Maharaj while on the subject of concepts, especially this fundamental concept I am, is that we tend to confuse it with all the crude, ill-formed thoughts, but in a sense this concept is like the most subtle activity, right at the very touchstone of consciousness. You can miss its fundamental nature if you just consider it in the way that we ordinarily use the word concept. 1 in 10 million will grasp the subtle part of the whole thing. The total population of Bombay, but obviously the Maharaj has not got disheartened either. He has been talking for 42 years. How many times has he seen anybody for whom he has held out any hope at all? Even then, it is a concept again, but I give you a criterion by which one can sort of judge something. When a stage is reached that one feels deeply, that whatever is being done is happening and one has not got anything to do with it, then it becomes such a deep conviction that whatever is happening is not happening really, and that whatever seems to be happening is also an illusion. That may be final. In other words, totally apart from whatever seems to be happening, when one stops thinking that one is living and gets the feeling that one is being lived, that whatever one is not doing, but one is made to do, then that is sort of a criterion. The teacher in the West who has his disciples ask themselves that question, who is the one who is living you now? It can never be announced. That is true. If an answer is given, it can only be at the mind level. If there is someone who has done a lot of sadhana, and having done that still has not achieved anything, he will have the questions to ask such as, what have I been doing wrong? One of the obvious answers for a lot of people who come here is that they have been waiting for Maharaj's teaching to come into their lives. How do all people in the world, successful or otherwise, operate? When you look into it, you will find that everyone has assumed a sample, a certain image of himself. I am so-and-so, an image or a pose, and it is from that pose that he is acting. That pose has been taken by his concept about himself, and only someone who understands this, the source of his actions, becomes free of it. He sees the faults as the faults. These God-men, even rishis, munis, who consider themselves avatars, every single one of them are doing the same thing. They have assumed a certain pose based on a particular concept, and unless they also see why they are acting and how they are acting from that pose based on concept, they will continue to do so and not be free from it. I've often felt that everybody in this world is trying to present some sort of face, and all our activities are in aid of maintaining that sense of the self we have to protect us from having to look beyond it. We were making some funny remarks about psychiatrists yesterday, until they begin to understand that so many of people's neurotic behaviors occur when this face they are trying to present is being threatened or challenged in some way, I don't think they will ever know what they are doing. Psychiatrists will have first to understand what mind is, not how the mind works, but what mind itself is. Then there may be some change. It is a long way off. It is indeed. Because they are never going to learn that from books. That is where everybody thinks he is going to learn it from. The Marathi word for psychiatrist is manashastri. That is, mana is mind, so doctor of the mind. Unless the doctor of the mind first understands what mind is, he will not get anywhere. Whatever goes on is based on the mind. The main question he should address in the first place is, what is it that the mind itself is based on? What is that of which mind is the content? Then he will get somewhere. Whatever goes on in the world is based on concept. The concept, in action, is mind. Have you thoroughly understood the fact that you are not the concept but the knower of the concept? Whatever names and designations exist in the world, they are all of concept, and you are not the concept. What I say, has it now acquired some familiarity? Very much so. I have tried to live with it for the past 2 years, every day of my life. It is not something to be put into practice easily. Only look at yourself. This is you. There is nothing to be done. I will never let you get away from it. Nothing to be lived, in fact. That is what was said earlier. When you realize what is living, what you think you are living, that is that you are merely being lived. Whatever you may think you have understood, whatever is your knowledge, it is all a concept. Rishi, Muni, Yogi, King, whoever he may be, is all based on concept, a pose taken. One thing that has baffled me for some time is with respect to a man I came across with all sorts of miraculous powers, who very obviously professed himself as such and such an avatar. This seems to me a concept which is not true to the essence of what India has always stood for, and Maharaj so obviously represents. With my scientific background, I could not doubt the veracity of this man's claims, once I was able to observe what happened to people before and after the performance of a particular miracle. But I have found it hard to understand why a man with such incredible control over the workings of nature and his ability to manipulate it did not seem to have the same degree of insight back into what are the seeds of this whole concept. Is this man someone in San Francisco? No, I am talking of Sai Baba. Interpreter, he always goes to the root of any matter. He says, there is Sai Baba. So what is Sai Baba? When we say Sai Baba, what is Baba? And how is it Baba? And earlier he said, why open someone else's shop? It does not matter to me. When he had the energy, he used to speak a lot. Whoever came at any level, he would speak to them. But now he is not too well. He says he wants to speak only to some scientists who specialize knowledge of the subject of the 5 elements. So he would be able to challenge whatever is being said. Otherwise, he says it would be a waste of energy, of which he is already depleted. After a while, that scientific knowledge, and that is what I am engaged in, is very boring. It is ever the same, and it does not fulfill you. Chapter 7. You are that which observes the coming and going of the consciousness. One of the things that Maharaj was talking about this morning is how the life force in our bodies, the prana, would not have been able to appear without consciousness being present. When you understand that this knowledge, consciousness, is your very thought, and as your conviction about that increases, you become desireless. Then gradually you let go of all desires. They drop away. With medicine, one can make a condition endurable. Each case has to be taken on its own merits. You can't make a universal law. Yes, in my experience, this can happen. You can't say, yes, it definitely will happen. That is just not the way it works. We must have death without pain. Most of the great sages in India died of cancer. We had one sage some 3 centuries ago by the name of Tukaram. He was doing bhajans, and at the last moment he was disintegrated into nothingness. No pain, no body, nothing. All he left were probably his sandals and sitar, that string instrument. He just vanished. We have 3 or 4 other sages like that, who just disappeared into thin air. Mirabai was another one. She merged into an idol. In the south, there was a sage from Bengal. He went to Puri, city in Orissa state, and he also merged into an idol, no remnants. So I said that is the best type, and if they could pass on the skill to all of us, we would be immensely grateful. The story I heard about Tukaram was not that he decided to die, but he was with his disciples, and he was so disgusted with their lack of response to his teaching that he said, "I'm going to leave you." He entered this little room with only one door and no windows at all, while the devotees were sitting outside. After some time, they went inside and found no trace of him. Interpreter: Maharaj does not want people to hang on to him for long periods. They should receive the talks, understand, and abide in them even while being away from him. Spirituality is very necessary to keep oneself alive. Having understood what is what, you come to the conclusion that death is also an illusion. A jnani is one who abides in the Absolute, who is the Absolute only. A jnani who has understood and transcended this consciousness does not want to prolong the life of consciousness. He leaves consciousness to its own nature, to spontaneity. He does not interfere. Of a jnani, nobody can say he has any relatives. All could be his relatives, or none could be. Only a jnani knows that everything is not, everything will not be, and everything has never been. For a jnani, individuality has been liquidated completely. There is only manifest consciousness, which is ample and plenty for him. He is saying there is no identification with that. A jnani has transcended consciousness, although the association with consciousness is still there, and consciousness, I amness, represents manifestation in its totality, because it is not confined or conditioned by the body as an individual. As are the concepts occurring to a person, so will be his behavior. This I am itself is the primary concept, and from that flow all others. According to you, what is your identity? With what identity do you exist in this world? Well, I try to detach myself from any identity. Yes, but who tries to detach from any identity? Who is it who detaches also from that identity? What is the nature of that particular identity or entity which wants to get rid of suffering? Is it the happiness, or is it something else? What do you think? Maybe the feeling of dissatisfaction. You have a feeling that happiness is there. You have a feeling that suffering is there. Between these 2 points, where are you? Who are you to find out this feeling of happiness and that feeling of suffering? I found there is actually nobody there. There is only the suffering. The fact that there is nobody, no entity to feel like that, are you really convinced of it? Well, the conviction is based on practicing. Nobody is there. Nobody is existing there. That's what you are saying. There is no identity whatsoever. That nobody. Is it wearing this monastic robe now, this garb that you wear? No. The difficulty is there is still some sense of attachment. Since when do you know that you are? Maybe since I was born. Did you have any experience of your birth, or you just heard about it? There are only vague memories of very early childhood and images. That is, you have heard about your birth, but you don't know anything yourself directly. I must have heard about it also. You know that you are because you have heard that you were born. Therefore, you are. You say, I feel I am since my birth. But you only heard of your birth. And that is more or less interrelated with one's environment. The memories build up a sense of self-identity. Regardless of what you have heard about being born, that particular identity is this, is it not? Whatever you feel you are, is it not the form? The same form, is it not, of which you have heard that it was born and signified your birth? You mean I stay in the same identity with which I was born? You have heard about the form being born, and this is the form. You call it now your identity, whatever you call yourself. You have heard you were born, and you are experiencing that birth only now, isn't it? From the moment you are experiencing the world, you are experiencing the birth. All that you understand is objective knowledge which is impermanent and will not remain with you. The one who says, I don't understand, that is you. You are that particular thing that says, I don't know. And whatever you know, whatever is an objective perception, is all impermanent. Doesn't that imply the sense of me as well? If you say you have a sense of me, that is not going to remain with you. It is impermanent. Once again, it is anatma. So why be bothered with that? Why worry about a thing that is not permanent? So where's your question now? The one who says, I don't know, does he exist prior to the one who says, I know? There is something which says, I know, and there is something in you which says, I don't know. Which is prior? There must be something existing before. What we mean by I know, I don't know. I know if it is just knowledge based on objects that are impermanent. That which knows it is impermanent is existing all the time. Without this knowledge, you cannot make the statement, I don't know. All objective knowledge is impermanent. But then what is so-called self-realization? We will come to that a little later. Self-realization means I am completely full. I don't want to know anything. I don't require anything at all. Self-realization is a term, a goal which we are trying to understand. If it is an outside answer, it cannot be reached. Unless it undulates within you, that means you are that, you will not be able to understand it. It cannot come from outside. Those are the only terms and goals, and no path leads to it. There is nothing more to be understood, since you are that. If you understand this, that is all. Then whatever objective understanding is impermanent, that entity which knows is permanent, which you will never be able to understand. The thing is complete already, and I have failed to realize that. I am trying all these days to be one with that. But as long as we try this, there is a sense of separation involved. That means in a way that trying must stop. You cannot try that, you know. It must be there already. You say it is perfect, is it not? Then where is the question of reaching the perfection? You cannot reach something which you are not. You must be perfect right from the beginning. Therefore, you are that. You don't have to reach something. You are trying to create a goal. Only your mind is creating something, you see. You don't know the fact at all, because you are the fact. How are you going to know a fact as an objective thing? That is, if it is a fact, it is subjective. You cannot know it as other than you. If you are going to know it as other than you, it becomes objective. It is impermanent. That is why all people are after spiritual pursuits, you see. They go with one hand out. They want something to be blessed. But if somebody blesses you, you put out another hand and say, bless me here also. Self-realization is not to be given on a platter. It is already there. What is there to be given? That which can be given to you has to be secured. You don't require any security or anything at all. It is already there. If you feel it is not there, you are never going to realize it. Some instruction helps, though. If you are getting the instruction according to a certain path or method, then again you will get into trouble. There is nothing like that. There is no path, no instruction at all. That you must understand. There are strong habit patterns. Yes, and once you know their impermanence, and that they are not true, why worry about the habit patterns? Remove the habit. Go beyond. If you cannot do so, then you cannot understand this, the whole final truth yet. No path, no instruction, no method, no technique. You are full. You are all one. You feel you are two. So, okay, understand you are not two. Advaita. You were a child, and you have become a big boy now, a big man. Do you know anything about along which path you have come, and how you have grown? You do not know anything about this. Then why do you want to ask which path to follow now? I would like to know the path by which you have come into this life and have grown into this man. If you tell me, then I will tell you the path to go back. These are all ideas, concepts, a grand idea that you were born and you are growing and you have come this way, that way. There are people who told you this. So I want you to go back to the source from where you seem to have come. Stop there and find out. Look back and see what is happening. Don't go with the current and then see what is what. You will never be able to find out because your travel in the stream is only conditioned with concepts. You have heard about things from people. You have read about it in books. That is why you are passing along the stream, is it not? Go back. Go to its source and find out whether there is anything. That is the beauty of my teaching. It takes you back to the source and does not allow you to leave that source at all. If you want to discuss anything regarding what happened to you after entering the stream, okay, then so many stories abound. All the scriptures of Hindu as well as other religions are available to you. Go and read them. They are of no use. But I say you can go back. Go back to that point from where you seem to have come, and see if you have really come. That will require meditation, and you will have to constantly return to that point. You will have to have full attention on it and find out really and truly whether you are actually coming from there, whether you are really born. Until then, they are all stories which you hear in listening to people. A certain amount of awareness to be able to go back is required. Awareness of what? You are already aware of so many things, are you not? You must be aware of the correct thing, mustn't you? You are already aware of everything. Whatever is happening around you, you are aware of. You can't do anything without being aware. So your attention must be on this source. That is all. Well, awareness must be there always. But you are not aware of that awareness which must be there. One is not always focused on this to the same degree. In the awareness also you are moving with the conditioning because your consciousness is nothing but a bundle of concepts, ideas, whatever you have gathered right from childhood. That means the point of awareness is in the present moment only. If you are really conscious of everything you see, would you ever try to enter the consciousness and thereby drag yourself down into the suffering? Consciousness brings you trouble, does it not? The very moment you became conscious that you are, the trouble started. Whatever suffering you are talking about began only when the consciousness came upon you. Suppose somebody wants to be. Being rooted in the consciousness means once again being rooted in the suffering and whatever comes out of that. All you need to understand is the nature of the consciousness and feel that you have nothing to do with it. Consciousness is a guest with you, is it not? It was not there, and in the future it is not going to be there either. It remains with you temporarily. In that temporary knowledge about the consciousness, you want to understand everything in that consciousness itself. What can you really understand in this consciousness? Unless and until you try to be aware of this consciousness, which is coming and going, which is conditioning, concepts, ideas, hopes, and all the things. So the awareness must be beyond consciousness. It is already beyond consciousness. If awareness is there, that is where the consciousness appears on. Now the body is there for you. The body is made of what? Elements, is it not? If for once you understand that you are not the elements, you persist prior to the coming of the elements. The moment the consciousness of I appears on you, you have the experience of the world. Therefore you have the experience of suffering as well as happiness. Try to know the nature of this suffering and happiness, which is coming through the consciousness into the mind. And once you understand that, you know that you are not anything of the sort. Then that's all. Suffering has nothing to do with you. Happiness also has nothing to do with you. It is all happening in the consciousness, and you are observing the consciousness coming and going. All this is known by something in you. This is your nature. You are that. That cannot be understood as an objective thing. The moment the consciousness comes and the moment it goes away from you, you are understanding that every day, is it not? Is it not in your own experience? In the sleep state, you are not conscious. In the waking state, you are conscious. That means all these things are there. You are there. You know that. Who knows that? Who knows the coming and going of the consciousness? The particular thing that knows it is you. That is your true nature. Do you understand that? Yes, I understand intellectually, but I still cannot grasp it. But where is the question of grasping and understanding it intellectually also? We always say, I have understood intellectually and I have grasped intellectually. But where is the question? It is a fact, is it not? Do you have to understand each and every fact by the intellect only? It is a fact. You know it now. That's all. It is that simple. Since you have been doing sadhana for 5.5 years, do you have any honest recognition of the identity in you which is permanent? You have the consciousness which knows the world, but you also know it comes and goes. Now, do you know what it is in you that remains always, which is not coming or going, but is permanently there? Were you able to find out within these 5.5 years of whatever you have been doing? You see there is a principle in you, which we call cetana, or consciousness, which is the common factor, because in cetana, you are moving, you are doing everything, but you also know this comes and goes. Consciousness is not permanent. When consciousness comes, you call it birth. When it goes, you call it death. So that also is not a permanent identity. Have you any other knowledge about a permanent identity within you, which always remains with you and never goes away? I cannot really say that I have such knowledge. You have accepted this fact right from the beginning when you say, I don't know anything. So we are now pointing out the you, that which says, I don't know anything, is your real nature. You are that. And that which you know is not real. It is impermanent. That which you know, which you can perceive with your eyes, is not true. And that which says, I don't know anything, that is your true nature. You are that, and you cannot find it out as an objective thing. The moment it becomes objective, it is impermanent, so it is not true. So actually it cannot be explained then. Naturally, it has already been stated elsewhere that it cannot be explained, it cannot be described. It can only be pointed out. So whatever I am pointing to, look at that particular point. Don't look at the finger which points out to you. You are looking at the finger. You are not looking at the point which is showing. The finger is not the thing. Any question? How far can any questions be of use if we cannot explain? Unless and until you are once again the image, you are not going to ask me a question. Otherwise you are one with me. There is no change in your state. You were perfect before you came here, and now that you are returning, you are also perfect. There can't be any change anywhere at all. But you feel there is a change now, so you are happy. Go back with your happiness. When you are is a feeling. Subsequently, any other experience is a feeling too. Where's the question of happiness or unhappiness? Everything is a feeling only. When you move around the world, checking out the advice from different people, various techniques, methods which you study, and then you come back to a certain conclusion, what happens to you, really? You remain the same, and never see that this journey was not necessary at all. No advice is ever necessary from anywhere. There is no change in me whatsoever. You are only moving in ignorance all over the world. If you are closing your eyes and say, I cannot see, I can't grasp. So long as you are identified with the body, your surrender has no meaning. What is meant by progress? There is no question of progress in the spiritual sense. To become more and more convinced of the Guru's words, to get more understanding about your true nature, is the only thing that matters. Other than that, there is no spiritual progress or spiritual path because you are that. Only you must be absolutely clear about it. The visions you are getting while doing meditation, what about them? Don't give much importance to them, because the first miracle you have is that you know that you are. Is when you know that you are, you see the world also. It means that in your consciousness the whole world is present. Surely that in itself is a miracle. To see the world with your consciousness? What greater miracle do you want? Interpreter. They have been going to somebody for 8 years. In spite of that, they are not able to understand his language. And Maharaj is asking, what have you done in the last 8 years? Your achievement is that there is some God, and you are a human being. That is your conviction. That is your only gain. So what have you understood? Well, unless you meet the right sage, you cannot progress in spirituality. You can't do anything. There is no progress. You have to dissolve progress. You get conviction about yourself only when you go to a man of conviction. But who knows him? He has no doubts about himself, but they find it very difficult to understand him. Have they read Maharaj's book at all? Yes, but they have some doubts. Whether they are satisfied is not certain, because only when you listen to him for a number of days can you understand. And in this way you can understand more if you attend both morning and evening talks. That is the best. All your doubts will cease. Don't allow any doubts to remain. Many of the people who come here have become jnanis. Maharaj has said that one should stay with the beingness consciousness. Is that enough to automatically realize oneself, or should one transcend the consciousness? I am giving you an example. Suppose I am sitting here and you come. I come to know you are. Then witnessing happens automatically. Has anything been done to make it happen this way? No, it is just like that. It is simple. You should understand. At some other time I have explained that it happens in the same way that a raw mango becomes a ripe mango. Some gurus have taught or insisted upon the necessity for actually being in the physical presence of a realized spiritual master. Maharaj did not seem to say that. Yet when reading the English translation of his recorded teaching, we feel we very much want to be in his company, and there certainly is something very enlightening about his presence. Does he feel that that is important or essential? It is very advantageous to get rid of all your doubts. That is why the question and answer session is required. So I want you all the time to ask questions. Otherwise, if you keep the doubts within, they will stay with you. This is the place to get rid of all concepts. There is barely anyone expounding knowledge who is totally honest with himself. Normally, knowledge is given out with a view to getting something. What is that self one has to abide in? The entire world is the expression of the self. At the same time, the tiniest of the tiny, like an ant, like an atom. That also is the self. Sometimes it is called the mustard seed in the heart. Beingness is like that sesame seed, very tiny, but its expression is the manifest world. The entire world owes its origin to the seed, the touch or pinprick of I amness. The seed contains the oily substance which is the very source of love. Having provided love or oil to the entire manifest world, the remnant is that I am. The pinprick or touch of I amness is the quintessence of all essences. Since you ask the question, many people having got the knowledge are not yet self-realized. He who claims to have gained the knowledge and yet is still worried as to what will happen to him cannot be considered to be a jnani. Have faith in the words of the Guru, whatever he says. Here I do not repeat or imitate what other so-called sages are doing. I am not championing any religion, have no stance or pose for anything, nor even that I am a man or a woman. If you accept any pose or stance, you are obliged to take care of that by following certain disciplines related to that pose. Pay no attention to whatever other people have been saying. Abide in the self only. As to actions by other sages, I have nothing to say, no comment. Whatever is happening spontaneously, let it happen. Did anybody exist prior to me? When my beingness appeared, then only everything else is. Prior to my beingness, nothing was. The layers of relationships pertaining to the bodily self are now being obliterated. Does he mean the 5 sheaths as traditionally described in the scriptures? Originally, I am untainted, uncovered by anything, without stigma, since nobody existed prior to me. Nor do I entertain any concepts about somebody existing before me. Everything is in the form of the manifest world. After the appearance of the knowledge I am with the body, together with the body and the indwelling I amness, everything is. Prior to the appearance of this body and the knowledge I am, what was there? There was nothing. The Paramatman was there, the highest self, the core of the self. This identity is without stigma. Even the sky cannot touch it. The space cannot touch it. It is subtler than space. It is just like sun rays or moonbeams. They do not get dirty in dirty waters. If such is their purity, what would be the purity of the self, consciousness? Understand this first moment. When we understood, we are. The first moment of the body. When it understood, it is. Recognize that very first moment. Once you grasp this, then you are the highest of the gods, the point at which everything arises. At that very point, everything also sets. The source and the end are the same point. So once you understand this, you are released from that point. Nobody tries to understand this happening of the self, the happening of this I amness. Once it is understood, I, the Absolute, am not this I amness. What did you understand? That when the practice of dwelling in this I amness reaches its fullness, there is no longer any containment by that sense of being a separate individual as indicated by the words I amness. That is how I understand it, but I may be wrong. The only way we can express it is through words. There is no other way. This I amness, the quintessence, the sattva, parakshakti, is not I. That I amness, the feeling of I am, is the quintessence of everything. But I, the Absolute, am not that. That I amness is the highest knowledge, and this is surrendered here by the abidance and the action. Interpreter, a duplicate of him who talks like this you will not find anywhere else. Addressing one American visitor, would you be inspired to put this into writing, these teachings? Yes, I would. Every creature in the universe prays to that principle which he considers his God or whatever, but all this can only happen from the time the life force has awakened until the time that the life force is no longer working. In the practice of meditation, this life force gets purified, and then the light of the Atman shines forth. However, the working principle is still the life force. When this purified life force and the light of the self merge into each other, then the concept, imagination, or mind, everything, is held in abeyance. When anyone tells you to do some sadhana, with what can you do sadhana of any kind? It can only be this life force. The only instrument one has to do sadhana with is the life force. This life force, instead of viewing it merely as an instrument, has to be treated, mentally accepted as the highest principle in the world, that is God, Paramatman, Ishwara, or whatever you want to call it. So when this life force is pleased, it gets purified and merges with the light of the Atman. What is creation? Whatever has been created, is it the creation of God, or is it the creation of this life force? By practicing meditation diligently and continuously, this life force gets purified to such an extent that it attains divinity. Do understand that this life force is God, and God is the life force, and be one with it. Now, when this life force and the highest principle become one in your meditation, Then whatever is reached by this merger signifies the moksha, or awakening. Liberation, call it whatever you like. So what is moksha? Subjection to the gunas and all the other upadis, the conditioning obstruction connected with the individual. All that disappears. That is liberation. This life force is the acting principle, and that which gives sentience to the person is the consciousness. This is the traditional imagery of Shiva and Shakti. Shiva is that speck of consciousness, and the working principle is the life force, Shakti. People only go by the various names that have been thrown up and forget the basic principle. The principle is that within the body, consciousness and the prana or life force together are Atman. I call it Antakarana, psyche. It is said that somebody is dead. So what has happened? The life force has gone, and the principle behind the life force, that is this consciousness, has also disappeared. That is all that has happened. I have been explaining the principle, analyzing it for all these years. But from now on, I haven't either the energy or the inclination to explain all this again, so I can only say what is to be done, if anything. And the only thing is that nothing is to be done, as is generally understood by the word do, but merely to sit in contemplation and let the consciousness unfold itself, unfold the knowledge about itself. You have done a certain amount of homework. That is why I am still explaining whatever needs further clarification. So far, what most people do is they explain only the surface position. You are to do dhyana, or meditation, and in that meditation itself, the consciousness will unfold whatever knowledge is to be revealed. But people generally don't go to the root of the matter and explain the principle, which is what I have been doing for all these years. But now, I will also stop doing this for other reasons. The Gita is a song sung by Lord Krishna. What is it you want to ask about? I don't have a lot of questions about the Gita. It seems that it epitomizes some of the things that Maharaj has been saying to me very graciously over the past few days. I just wanted to hear his comments on that. What meaning did you gather? What have you understood? I feel that when dhyana is done properly in the way we are instructed, the first thing that becomes apparent is that this consciousness, which is usually spread in 1,000 different directions by our daily activities, starts to get a greater sense of itself, and then witnesses what arises. At the same time, the body's energy as a consequence becomes intensified too, and it seems to be polarized in a vertical dimension. I can't explain it any better than that. The other thing that happens seems to be part of the purification, and what he was talking about was that I am talking about the meaning of words, first as you have understood them, not what is happening. Happening would be an experience. Well, that is what I have said. That is what I understand by the meaning. I also feel that many of the Upanishads and the Gita talk about the heart as the seat of the soul, or where the soul enters this body. And beingness is something that is prior to this whole vertical dimension in which the life force moves. And even the life force gets eventually resolved in the center. It is like Maharaj's description of consciousness as a tiny seed, and in that seed not only our body being, but the world which we perceive, even the whole universe, has its seat. When dhyana is directed, the tendency of consciousness is reversed into the center. Then that knowledge becomes resolved, the life force becomes purified, and is once again reabsorbed in that center, and you are free of that tendency to play into the world all the time. This consciousness and the life force, when they merge, they tend to become steady in Brahmananda, and then all thoughts cease, even the thought that you are sitting in meditation. And that is the start of samadhi. That state will remain for a while and discontinue again, whatever the reason, and then normal behavior in the world will start. That is, the life force will start its normal work or activities. Now I am asking, this disease that I am said to suffer from, to what has this illness come? It has come to this consciousness and the working principle, that is, the life force. These two are concerned with that illness, and I, being apart from it, am not concerned with the illness. But it is one's duty to keep that life force in reasonably good working order. That is why the medicine was taken in the same way that the food is normally taken, so as to keep this consciousness and the life force in proper working condition. So medicine is much like food, but as far as I am concerned, I don't really care whether this life principle and the consciousness work or not, because I am totally apart from it, beyond it, and tired of it. The life force and the consciousness are not really two. As a concept, they are treated as such, but they are really one. As soon as a form is created, the life force is infused with that form, and sentience is automatically present. There is a physical form, and the life force, and in the absence of the consciousness there would be only a technically alive body. But merely that life force within the body, what is the use of it? It is like gas coming out of one's innards. No, it has no meaning, no function, unless consciousness is also present. So it is this consciousness which gives this life force, which would otherwise be merely air, the potency to create a sentient being. People write to me, thanking me for my guidance, and they say they now understand that although physically they and me are separate, we are actually one. All that, however, is still superficial knowledge which has been obtained by the consciousness upon its realization that it is not the body. But it is only at that stage that the knowledge has remained, on the level of words. They have not really gone beyond it. So they have just replaced certain concepts by other concepts? Yes. You see, so long as the concept I am is still there, they have not gone beyond or prior to it. They have not gone beyond the total manifestation. So now when people come here, I talk with them. From what level am I talking? I am talking from the level that you are consciousness and not the body-mind. In my state, whatever comes out is from the total manifestation and not from the point of view of the Absolute. Hang on to that consciousness which is your only capital, and do dhyana, and let that unfold whatever knowledge has to be unfolded. Previously, he says he had an intense desire to impart knowledge. So when people came and he found someone who was really interested, he even suggested that they stay 4 days, 5 days, or a week or longer, so that those who had made plans to leave would change their minds and stay on. But he says that was some time ago. Now if someone says he is going to leave in the evening, he will say, "Leave now." He gives an example. At a traveler's bungalow, people will come and go. The bungalow itself is not concerned whether someone stays for an hour or 10 days. Earlier there was that little bit of desire left, not for himself but for imparting knowledge. But now even that little bit of desire, which previously did not enter total manifestation, has gone and has become the total manifestation. That weak link between the total manifestation and the persons who came here has now snapped. Have you understood this? Now there is no mind left at all, the mind to create a link between him and anything else. That mind has totally disappeared. People come here. When someone goes to someone, there is a purpose. This may be for acquiring something worldly, or as in this case to acquire spiritual knowledge. So whatever the purpose, as far as I am concerned, they come, acquire something, the knowledge. Then the person will say, "I have got my knowledge now, thank you very much," and leaves. If I ask him to stay, it means I have some purpose in asking him. The purpose may be good, bad, worldly, or unworldly, but there is bound to be some purpose. But I have no purpose. So he goes. He goes. If he stays, he stays. Now the lady says, "But what about the other person?" I am not concerned with the other person. I am talking of one end of it, not the other. There is this Adhyatma Kendra, which is a foundation created for this person for spreading knowledge given by me. But I have no interest in that center. What the center does, whether it exists or does not exist, does not concern me. So now they have accumulated some money. They are going to give it to my family to build the house. So whether they do so or not, and what the family does with it, is of no interest to me. I don't need even a house to live in. What is more, I don't need God either. I have no need of any kind.